Today we're talking about what might just be the rarest Cartier watch ever made. It's the Tank Guichet, which is made in even fewer numbers than the coveted Crash, but gets far less attention. So today we're going to give it its moment in the spotlight and talk about why this model is so important for Cartier and why it should be on your radar. In the world of watches, Cartier sort of stands out as a master of design. So you have brands that are known for high horology creations, complications, and other incredibly sophisticated mechanical achievements. And while Cartier is definitely a high-end watchmaker, they also bring in their high jewelry prowess when they make their watches. And I think that allows the brand to generate some of the most unique and striking designs in the world of watches. I think that's really the case with the Tank Guichet. The Cartier Tank was released in the late 1910s, and just 10 years later, the brand introduced the Tank Guichet, which was produced from the late 20s into the 1930s, usually in piece-unique iterations for the brand's highest-end VIP collectors. The Tank Guichet, I think, respects the Tank namesake perhaps better than any other model because it has this sort of slab case construction where you have an entirely flat metal surface with two brand cards on left and right side that sort of mimic the tracks of a Tank model. And you have a outsized jumping display for the hour and radial minutes. It's one of the most striking aesthetics on the wrist. It doesn't look like pretty much any other watch on the market, and that's part of what made this model so fashion forward in the 20s and 30s when it first was released. After the 1930s limited edition pieces of, one-offs for high-end collectors, very, very few of the Tank Guichet models were actually made and presented to the market. In 1996, the Tank Guichet re-emerged with 9 pieces that Cartier made for a Cartier watch auction. And this sort of reignited collectors' enthusiasm for the Tank Guichet, which really at this point hadn't really been seen by collectors in the broader watch world because it was residing in the collections of private collectors across the world. And these models weren't really in general circulation. So it took the industry by storm when these 9 models are presented for auction in the general public. After 1996, in 1997, Cartier celebrated their 150th anniversary in style with a limited edition of 150 pieces of the Cartier Tank Guichet, executed in this case in platinum. And that's what I actually have on my wrist today. We have one of these available in the office. 150 of these pieces were made in commemoration of the 150th anniversary. And this was the first time that this model was produced in numbers greater than maybe 1 or 2 for mass market as far as 150 pieces is concerned. And again, now we sort of have the Tank Guichet emerging as a style icon in the broader watch world. It got time in the press and it finally was sort of seeing the light of day and its story was being told for the very first time. After 1997, in the early 2000s, 2005 to 2006 or so, the Cartier CPCP collection, which is probably the best of the collections that Cartier has ever made in terms of reigniting enthusiasm for heritage designs of the brand in generally smaller production releases, we had the Tank Guichet come back again with a 100-piece limited edition, this time in rose gold. And I think that this sort of speaks to what Cartier does best with their collection, is allow these models to be preserved in their original proportions and designs with sometimes just slight tweaks to the overarching design language. So when we look at the Cartier Tank Guichet in sort of the broader pantheon of Cartier watches, I think we really get a sense of just how rare these models actually are. For example, I think what we can do is give a little bit of a comparison to the Cartier Crash. There's probably no model that has gotten more attention in the last 10 years from Cartier. It's sort of an icon of the brand, and for very good reason. There's no doubt that this is one of the most important watches that the brand ever made, and all told, not more than maybe 3,000 pieces have been made across the entire production run of the Cartier Crash. And it has this sort of whimsical case shape that people fell in love with, and they're rare, and they're collectible, and they're striking in design, and there's no doubt that the model deserves the respect that it receives. But when we start putting the Guichet next to the Cartier Crash, I think we get a sense of just how scarce these Guichet models are. All told, to date, there's probably not more than 300 or 400 Tank Guichet models across all of its iterations, which is an incredibly small number of pieces when you think about how popular Cartier is in the broader watch world. And when we think about the attention that the Crash receives with 3,000 examples, I think we get a sense of why the Tank Guichet is so coveted in collecting circles. So we have two examples here for you to see. First is the 150-piece limited edition that the brand did in 1997 for their 150th anniversary, and that's what we have on the left here in platinum. It's a really beautiful design, and I think that it encapsulates the slab construction of the tank model incredibly characteristically. And then we have this slightly more modern rose gold iteration, which has a just ever so slightly larger case and beefier construction. And this is part of the CPCP collection that we mentioned earlier. These models, which are currently still findable but incredibly scarce, are going to become almost impossible to get. And that's why I think it's such a privilege that we have both of them available for viewing and purchase at Analog Shift. What you'll see is that both have the same sort of signature display, where we have the hour displayed on the very top of the dial, and then we have the minutes displayed in these sort of radial portions at the bottom of the dial. And these pieces, I think, exhibit the details that made Cartier so well respected in the world of jewelry as well. We see on Cartier models, and specifically on these pieces, some of the details in finishing that speak to Cartier's mastery of jewelry. And I think that one of the ways that we see this most prominently is the vertical brushing that we have across the entire surfaces of the top of the guichet, but then we have these razor sharp polished facets on all of the extremities of the case, and also separating the brand cards on left and right from the center case, where there's this sort of vertical polished band. This type of finishing is not something that we see regularly in the industry, and I think that it serves as an almost subtle but still noticeable reminder that Cartier has mastered jewelry design and how to finish and approach precious metal materials in a tasteful way, in a way that really other brands can't say they do. And so there's just a lot of subtle elegance in this well-finished package. On the wrist, I think this watch wears incredibly well, considering that it's a solid piece of metal on the wrist. It's incredibly well balanced, and it hugs the wrist because of its relatively compact proportions. In just this past year, Cartier announced the launch of their very first production Cartier Tank Guichet. And I think that this is going to be really good for the model, because for the very first time, we're going to start to see many more collectors get hands-on with the Cartier Tank Guichet, which I think is going to do wonders for its popularity. So there you have it, one of the rarest watches that Cartier ever made. And I think that this watch is sort of at the intersection of two important trends that we're seeing within the watch industry. Number one, a return to attention for Cartier models, which is incredibly well-deserved, and it's been a long time coming. And also, passion for these sort of alternative time displays, which is coming back into vogue in the 2020s. We're starting to see collectors search for watches that convey the time in an atypical way that sort of stands out. This model is perfectly situated to have a sort of renaissance in the coming years. And I think we're going to start to see the collectors pay more and more attention to this watch. It's going to become one of the most talked about and collectible Cartier models in the entire collections. We're incredibly proud to offer both of these pieces for viewing and purchase at Analog Shift. And we're excited to be able to play an important role in broadcasting the significance of these incredibly rare and precious timepieces.